after a year of teaching?
Well, I knew I had to go into service. I was leaving in October, so I had between June and October to keep myself busy. So my Uncle Fred, who owned McIntyre's Dairy at the time, who I idolized, that's another story, said, look at, he said, I got a lot of stuff that we need done here at the dairy. Among them was painting the whole place, and he said, why don't you come to work for us for me for a few months and make a few dollars and before you leave. So I said, that'd be great. So I did, and here we ran into the car situation again. I really needed another car. So there was a guy that worked at the dairy who had a little motor scooter, Vespa, V-E-S-P-A motor scooter. He sold it to me for $50, and I motored from Mount Prospect Street to McIntyre's Dairy in the morning and home at night on this little tiny motor scooter. And matter of fact, Nancy and I had a lot of fun on it. We went as far as Lakeville to see, at the time my mother was living.
Now, McIntyre Dairy, was that in Bridgewater or Whitman?
Yeah, it was in Bridgewater, 106.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I went there, then I went into service, and I came back and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And my uncle said, why don't you talk to me before you make any decisions? And I said, sure. He said, look, he says, we're growing like crazy here. He was of the greatest generation. He had served in the Second World War, wanted to be a pilot, but he was too tall, and he ended up on a carrier ship as the planes came in. If they were on fire or going to crash, he was on the crew that pulled the pilots out. Never talked about it. Never, ever. And I knew him. I was as close to him as anybody in the world. And so I said, he said, I'm going to create a new position for you. I said, what would it be? He said, sales manager. He said, you get away with people, and he said, why don't you try it? I said, okay. So I went, and sales manager was, you did everything besides try to get sales up. You had your drivers, and you had foremen, and you had spare drivers, but when the weather was bad, you were out of everybody. There were trucks sitting there. The minute you knew there was a snowstorm coming, you knew you were going to have to go out on a truck, which I did, which later served me well because I met a lot of people that supported me when I ran for office delivering milk. I never had a steady route, but I was all over Plymouth County and Norfolk County and you name it. So I did that for about 10 years. And my vision for the future was becoming owner of the dairy somewhere down the road when my uncle decided he was no longer wanted to do it. And the dairy was growing. We were bottling milk for all of the small dairies all over southeastern Massachusetts, including, I'm in Duxbury right now, and there's a farm that I can walk to right here, O'Neill Farm. We bottle their milk, and they would come and pick it up. So it kept growing, but after 10 years there, my brother, who had been in the legislature, David, decided he wasn't going to run again, and I was going to stay. I was happy working with my Uncle Fred, but because he was leaving, there was going to be a vacant seat. Everybody came out of the woodwork that was going to run. So it was early, and before nomination papers, they were already having candidates nights, and so I went to the candidates night. It was in the Upper Town Hall in Middleborough, and listened to the prospective candidates. And I left, and I said, there isn't one person there that I think should sit in David's seat, so I'm going to run. Now I'm Johnny-come-lately to this whole thing because there's about 6 people are running, but I'm going to upset the apple cart. I'm running. I talked to David. He said, gee, that would be great.
What did Nancy say?
Huh?
What did Nancy say?
She was all in favor of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't have done it if she said no. So, so anyway, I talked to David. He was all excited, and family was all excited. And So what I did, the first thing I did is that all of the people who were running, I went to see them personally and said, look, I'm going to run, I just wanted to let you know. Most of them dropped out. There were 2 people that didn't drop out. And one of them was Tony Anaki from Bridgewater, and another was a fellow named Joe McGrath from Middleborough, and everyone else.
Tony Anaki from the restaurant.
Yeah.
When was this, Peter? Do you know?
Yeah, it was 1971.
1971.
So the primary was tough, but through David's goodwill, the Flynn name was known in the district, and he was always there for me when I needed him. And we did some very unusual things. The town of Plymouth, town of Middleborough, and the town of Bridgewater played the Thanksgiving football game for 70 years. And the year I ran was the last year they were going to have the football game. They were changing our opponents for Thanksgiving Day. And it was the big game. It had been, everybody went, there were thousands of people there. So somebody came up with the idea that the end of a tradition and the continuing of a tradition. And the end of the tradition was, it was a placard with all of the scores of all of the Bridgewater Middleborough games back to the very first game. And you flipped it over, that was the end of the tradition. You flipped it over to continue the tradition, was David Nye. It was neat, and we gave out hundreds of them at the game. And so we did all kinds of things like that. And I loved campaigning, and I helped David. It's a simple thing. Campaigning is really simple, especially a primary campaign. And at that time, there were no computers or anything. But you went back through the last 3 elections to the primary voters, and you listed them all out. And if they had voted in all 3, you know they were going to vote again. If they had voted in 2 of the 3, well, maybe. If they voted in 1, maybe. But these were you forget everybody else that was registered to vote. Everybody, forget them. You concentrated on these people, and that's what we did. They wanted lawn signs up. I said, no. I said, you're not going to waste your time on lawn signs or money on lawn signs. We're going to contact every one of those people that have voted in the past 3 elections in the primaries, which we did, and we won. And I always used that method, no matter what the campaign, whether I was the campaign manager for Ed King or whatever. That was the system we used, and it was tried and it was true. And then in the final election, I ran against a very fine gentleman, Stan Barnacote from Middleborough. His family was known, everybody knew him. Barnacote Monuments. They were big Republicans, and it should have been a Republican district. David was the first Democrat ever elected in it, and it should have been a Republican district. But anyway, I ran, and we had an energetic, enthusiastic group from Middleborough, and we beat Stan Barnacote, and I became the state representative.
When did you take office?
1973.
1973.
Yeah.
For how long a term?
I was there for, well, they were 2-year terms, so I had to run I had to run a total of 4 times, because I ran for 4 terms. And then it's when I decided I wanted to be the sheriff. But,
So you served 3 terms in the legislature?
I was in the legislature 4 terms, and I was sheriff for 2 full terms. I got elected for a 3rd term, and didn't finish it because I left to start my own business. So, but the legislature, I loved every minute of it. I loved every minute of being sheriff. There wasn't a day I got up that I didn't want to go to work, and it was just, it was good. People think, he's just saying this, but I would wake up every day and I would say, geez, I hope I can help somebody today.
Yeah.
I really did. And I mean, over the course of all the years I did this kind of stuff, I was able to help people. And that was the most gratifying part of the whole thing. There were sacrifices along the way. My family, you know, Nancy would get so mad at me. She said, well, at least we can have dinner without you having to answer the phone. Well, the phone would ring, and I would sit there, and she'd look at me. And finally she'd say, okay, go ahead. Because people, when they wanted to get a hold of you, figured they could get you at dinner time at home.
Yeah.
So that was a busy phone time. But, and I accomplished a few things that I thought were unusual. One of them was, do you want me to keep going on, Dave?
Sure, sure.
One of them was when I served 4 terms and my district was changed 3 different times. Once the first time because they eliminated double districts, and of course that was unconstitutional because of 1 man, 1 vote.
Mm-hmm.
So in Brockton, for instance, they had 3 representatives that represented the whole town. So that in some of the major cities, this was the problem. So they had to divide the city up, and when they divided the city up, you had to have equal number of votes in each district. So some parts of the cities also had to take parts of the towns around them. So the first term, that happened. I had Middleborough, Halifax, and Bridgewater the first term, and I was really happy with that district. The second term I had Bridgewater and Rainham and part of Taunton and part of East Bridgewater. So they kept changing the district, which was difficult because it meant you had to become knowledgeable with all of the local problems and so forth. And the fourth time I was unopposed, which was kind of really nice. But what you normally do, the state rep, when you get a new town in the district, you go and meet the elected officials. And so I went the first time I went to Rainham. I introduced myself and talked a little bit about what I thought were some of the problems. And I said, I want you to, if there's anything I can help you with, please let me know. And Don McKinnon, who was a selectman over there for years and years, said to me, yeah, there's one thing we'd really like done. And I said, what's that? He said, well, there's a piece of 495 between Rainham and Bridgewater and Mansfield that's never been completed. I think it was 13 miles, 13.1 mile, if I remember. He said, I want you to, he was kidding. He said, I want you to get that done. And I said, okay, I'll look into it. And I said to myself, how in the world would I ever get, $80 million to finish that piece of road? So lo and behold, I became very friendly with the House Chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in our legislature. And I said to him, his name was Lou Nicanillo. I said,
Lou Nicanello. I
Yeah.
know Lou Nicanello very well.
Yeah.
I worked in his campaign.
Yeah. Lou who?
Lou who?
Yeah. So I said, Lou, is there any way to do this? He said, yeah. He said, I know the transport, because he was chairman of transportation. He said, I know the transportation people, in Massachusetts, and he said, I know the lobbyist in Washington, and he says, we'll fly down and see him. And I said, I don't have any money to fly down. He said, no. I said, I get money in the budget. He said, this is a legitimate travel expense. So we flew down, and there's a picture somewhere of me and Lou and the lobbyist. And lo and behold, they had just, there was a bond on the floor of Congress to build roads and bridges and so forth across the country. And I made my plea to the lobbyist, and we met with a few congressmen too. And he said, I'll get it done. I said, what? He said, I'll get the money. I said, really? Because of course he was lobbying for the construction industry.
Yeah, sure.
Specifically the road builders.
Yeah.
And this was going to be great for him in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So, and the other great part of it was a 90-10 split. The federal government was going to pay 90%, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts was going to pay 10%.
Unbelievable.
So we got the money in the I forget the exact name of the budget in Washington, but we got our money in there, and I just couldn't believe it. So we came back, and I quickly filed a bill in Massachusetts for the other 10%, which was put in the capital outlay bill and approved. And the road got built. The 13.1 mile missing link, we had named it the missing link.
When did it get built?
Huh?
When?
This was, it was the final, this was 1977, 1978, 76, 77, that time period. Because as you know, the federal government doesn't move fast. But the road got built, and the final piece of it was the last piece, which was this interchange in Rainham Bridgewater interchange to the new 495, which became the Lawrence Dowd interchange.
And that's the picture of the
And that's
dedication?
the picture of the dedication day of that final piece of the link.
Wow.
And
And it was named for Lawrence Dowd?
the interchange was named for Lawrence Dowd.
Wow.
That piece of, that link, missing link, became very controversial. People said, well, you know, it's going to bypass some of the local businesses, and you know, they're going to suffer because of it. And other people on the other side said, this is a boom because it's a, you know, it's going right past the industrial park that they were going to build in Taunton. And as a result of this missing link being put in, the Taunton Industrial Park boomed. Because you come out of the industrial park, you jump right on 495, you're there. It was the best thing that ever happened to Taunton, Rainham, the whole area. So I, in the beginning, never thought I would get it done, but everything kind of fell into place, and it got built. And Senator Parker was a senator at the time, and he of course took credit also for it, which he should. He was a senator, but he really didn't have to do anything. You know, just make sure the money stayed in the Senate budget, which it was going to anyway. But and I love Senator Parker. So Ray Buffetti, who was the rep from Taunton, he and I made sure his name was on everything that had to do with this missing link, because it went through Taunton.
Wow.
So yeah, it was. I felt really good about it. And Don McKinnon came to me and he said, "I can't believe that you got that done." And we did. I said, "Well, you know, it was a cooperative effort. It was a well worthwhile project. People believed in it, and they supported it and funded it." So it was because of the Rainham selectmen asking me to do that. The first meeting I ever went with in my new district.